their President/Chief Trump. I want to explain to you why and how Christians and Muslims are reading their religious books backwards. They're valuing, appreciating them out of sequence. They can't afford to have discerned, appreciated the way they asked to be appreciated right up front. The Old Testament says, only defend right here where the names of the people, the sciences will come together. A whole bunch of Americans know every once in a while, a real small minority, but they jump into everything. Oh, Jesus. And they're fake and they want to speak about Jesus. People aren't going to fight with them. But the people, and the same thing with the counters to it. In other words, as a collusion, because of what's roles with databases hyper additionally from how the breaching method used and uses them. Everyone needs to step back because everyone was taught sickly distinctly, but sickly non-distinctly too. Criminally foreign influence replacing what James Madison left declassified. And with our founders behind him and his plan, they had to counter extort everyone at key locations, make them fake excuses at the same time for why and how. Oh, we're going to pretend it's because of this or that. Meanwhile, there's slavery entrenched. Since before America's founders were born, they wanted to understand by Americans clearer than day. Only thing we understood clear day, someone said, don't shoot until you see the whites of eyes. And there was slavery. And our schools and the people who counter them say together that our founders owned slaves. James Madison declassified for that reason with our founders. Why not and why they did not reveal their names. The only founder that we know for certain was our founder, was James Madison. And then he was a president/chief too. He detailed why and how while he was a president, he didn't have free speech. Even roles against every woman were only permitted a whole bunch of ways with all subject treatments used to measure and maintain everyone inclusion/us against themselves and against everyone else. Otherwise, that body was censed, including if it was a majority of people, including if it was everyone. And that was adapted to. This breaching method had the names of other countries manifest at and next to campuses and directed to hide it here and there. Where and how we are, groupings of humanity now tactically ulterior from that one. Identity of progression generating completely distinct individual identities of species bodies, made up each of individual bodies. And with group differences like male and female generated between species bodies, so that we could discern to an extent the identity of nature itself and or the identity of the value/value progression. That is neither us nor them, but while it is all things anyway. It is the perfect system, and it is generating all group differences. It also shows us with this, excuse me, and or it demonstrates and demonstrated whenever we were or are using systems abridged from its own. In the moment we will be. It shows us with demonstration/S. But the names of the people of the sciences, which is relative to how and why, that says at the beginning of the Old Testament, only defend right here. And where the names of the people of the sciences will come together. And the part becomes before it. And no, this is before the part with the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And the famous story of Adam and Eve. People can't be honest about the difference, about the first part of the Old Testament that says, only defend right here. Where the names of the people of sciences will come together, and the part that comes before it. Coming together as a group, in other words, group, no. The difference of names of people of sciences are ourselves. And again, the differences of the people attacking our founders or the people defending them have stated definitions of our founders. that are all tactical terror from what our founders dictated with James Madison still. He detailed how and why, not to entertain other than himself. They detailed why and how, not to detail. I mean, not to let people entertain people pretending other than our founder, other than James Madison is a known one of the plural founders that we know existed because they had to be used to counter extort inside more than 13 colonies, even with slavery rolls, even with collusions against all women, even against the native population, even multi-front against the native population, even as all means to help and help all the hurt against every single person as collusion / S with negative treatments and positive treatments as syntactically valued to keep those collusions then and increasingly to keep everyone looking back, leaving out it as collusion / S, or blaming the collusions only partially. We're only forced roll. We're forced rolls. See, this came from off campuses. That which has been the campus's state self-valued collusion / S, replacing what our founders communicated. The names of the people of the sciences have been using their knowledge of good and evil to get over on us. They want to have a nature debate they can't afford. That's where James Madison's plan is the only correct answer. They have it replaced. And with Boolean logic, that is also tactically delusions wrought and the nature of calmness. That is an affront to every single individual since we were kids. And there's a breaching method that showed the foreign countries' kids and adults, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and terrorists at the same time. They have to hide the same collusion / S with differences in the past and now. Their own differences and other people's differences. The breaching method used confessions before the church did, distinctly from the breaching method, but also non-distinctly from it, because the breaching method has complete possession of the fact, treatment, nature, quality, aspects, and nature of the names of the people of the sciences, and exceptions like the names of the people of the religions that were child abused. Even our most intelligent people. And I'll tell you something though. This identity, it shows us, in other words, little kids in the cities, by the time they're 10 years old, they have a wisdom distinctly from the kids in the suburbs, but and neither kids are being able to communicate it because there are still collusion / S replacing what both our founders and nature itself simultaneously communicates. And there are self-valued collusions with it. We forget, but we understand. We have black people's whites of eyes. We understood when we heard and had demonstrated how we heard and experienced. They're not appreciating history and reality legitimately. And not how our founders communicated. But see, everyone's missing that because they've been pretending our founders other than they were. There was a torture, extortion, and slavery method / S and only allowed collusion / S, only allowed sensing anyone not, including if it was a majority of people, and don't even realize how they were sensing, and still don't. You guys will not. I asked you 50,000 times to get the interbranch and the news onto paper, one name and sequence first. Get me out to conversations with them. This is Connecticut interbranch who had roles with the names next to the World Trade Center attack. The night before, other short-term waves before it, in the morning before it, before the World Trade Center attack. They have collusions with the ones with Connecticut networks and their sources. And they bring their kids in too. There's an O'Neill family who has their kids as teachers in West Hartford, and they have their kids in campuses in Wethersfield involved with sexual and medical offenders of kids. They have their kids involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders with them. With WFSB has a whole bunch of foreign and domestic medical families involved with Hartford Hospital, with attaching fake kids to fake ties to doctors with them and their family members. And two, when they use that place for forced mental evaluation, they're covering up their collusions with the crime scenes and constantly use /S of all ages and nature of investigations. Investigators use remotely, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. All kinds of boyfriends of girls they bring into with the victims' advocates, including with the victims as men who have collusions with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, a whole bunch of different countries and interbranch families at the same time, putting the same fake acting tied to as collusion /S with the same fake things stuck in databases. Because people have to hide their roles with the use of differences, their own people's, other people's. That's why Facebook has not worse than a monopoly. Facebook has been planting evidences and collusions at crime scenes. New Britain Superior Court has a bunch of people with FBI Director Robert Luskin involved with digital crimes and whiting forensics with them, and with a principal obscure nature with way worse than digital crimes and organized crimes. With the Leahy family, fake through the mail, fake conversations with me, and about legal cases where they have collusions with federal criminals and their family members and their educators and their roles with predicate acts at campuses and next to them and along routes like Route 175 from the following locations and Route 3, conjunctions to it and to that, like the state judicial branch offices. Increasingly collusions with people with identity theft, fraud, slanders, wire crime acts and methods with Wethersfield Police and Wethersfield Pizza House and the state judicial branch offices. With his Stephen Stocko with identity theft, fraud, slanders. Also with his wife, reportedly his wife, Maria Fazzino, and her educators. She has rules with foreign and domestic military, and child abusers, leaders of kids. I never saw on a Wethersfield campus in my life. These are people with Hartford Hospital involved with untimely deaths, and people involved with like their neighbor, the neighbors of a Payanza family and a Pazina family with the state judicial branch offices, and next to in conjunctive to our highway where it runs into Hangdog Lane, and that connects to the Brown Turnpike before the heart of Hartford and Route 3, and which has something to do increasingly with news, all sides of criminal and civil cases, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and interbranch with the same sequence shifts and the same families' collusions with the ones next to the World Trade Center attack, involved with ongoing predicate acts and methods of them. There are methods of predicate acts recorded, and people on a mass scale are prevented free speech. Someone must teach. I have an algebra teacher that was a female. I never had a personal conversation. I didn't respond when she repeated sexual things about a little girl near my house who's increasingly involved with foreign and domestic intelligence families and Jewish-themed people. She repeated, so I never met her in my life. Her father has rules with some smoke that came through my chimney. And so Inspector Mike, refusing to identify himself over the phone and with the people on the side of the house a number of times, and their family members at Hartford Hospital saying things to make it look like I spoke with them before that or then. And where they mix that with where they just totally fake transcripts there too. A whole bunch of people with the Leahy family have roles with a Brian Silver, and others with the Britain Superior Court. A Rick Cianfaglione recorded, confessed, demonstrate, confirmed people named Collo and O'Brien are on my street involved with this Leahy family. And a Brian Silver, a Judge Smith too, spoke fake things, have recording capacity demonstrate collusions too with other people that have been sticking fake things in databases, collusions with the databases, with the Smith families, people named Smith tied to a Kalol family, and people sticking fake things in databases with a whole bunch of different countries involved with them. There's an Eric Klotz who was in my sixth grade class. He came to my campus when I was in sixth grade. Increasingly, people were putting people tied to body dumping spots in Central Connecticut State University have religious spots, religious differences, this different, like identity theft, fraud, slanders, fake motivations for why they like people or whether they don't like people, all that, all the differences. So, in other words, Joe DeMoro has roles with Wethersfield Police and FBI Director Robert Luskin, with them intercities, with Central Connecticut State University, with my educators, and some kids involved with child abusers, leaders, and kids years apart, first forest, and more then and now. It's people all along Route 175 who have been went out of their way to have other people film fake things. These are people that have collusions with all sides of criminal and civil cases, and the interbranch are used remotely with the same predicate acts with facts, and then they can't afford that future at the same time. Anything other but a bunch of fakes with differences, with values, like what it means, what people say. If it's positive behavior, racketeering worse than war crimes, with the tactical delusions relative to that psychiatry has and has had, as their collusions are replacing what James Madison and our founders left declassified, and as their collusion /s using the words of people of the past, pretending that's science. When nature itself shows us, and when our founders declassified, nobody had free speech. There was a breaching method that measured and maintained rules even with slavery. You don't vote on slavery. See, the nature debate contains quality aspects of nature that perpetually screened how a breaching method was this collusion /s with it. They have the celebrities, comedians making examples of free speech. In other words, foul mandated law for the only three branches of government. They won't get on paper legitimately. They already fake too many papers and too many fake things. They have collusions with all sides of cases already. Then hyper additionally at the state corrections offices and judicial branch offices with the same house /s increasingly involved with organized crimes and whole methods of them per a method /s of them recorded too. That's involved with American history here. These are people next to the campuses I went, all tied together, fit to collusions by worse. They have a whole bunch of countries involved with them. Whole careers are kept criminally foreign influenced. Every year from leading up to the World Trade Center attack, in that context and since, are people I never knew at all, but had their names repeated to me, like a Joshua Julian. And there's ones I only know briefly, really quick, like a Joseph Dennis and a John Dennis. They have roles with a former mayor of Gold, and their neighbors with people from Florida and other countries, involved a whole bunch of different countries, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and people involved with body dumping spots. And the spots near Central Connecticut State University, all along Route 175, and their roles with the street conjunctive to Hangdog Lane, where it runs into Two-Rod Highway. A bunch of people tied to body dumping spots, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, a whole bunch of people with Hartford Hospital, with various natures of drugs and medicines crimes, and like that use them for wire and mail crimes. A whole bunch of people with federal evidences crimes at Hartford Hospital are involved, along with multiple courts, with the same house on my street, with the ones with the streets parallel, involved with syntax, with them planting evidences, and ones with the name O'Brien, with multiple police departments forging and switching names involved here, and with violence. And they have more people with a Phil Cololo. They're trying to provoke me to physically attack him for the roles with sequence shifts. Also, when they have people bring up their names, that's also like a O'Neill family has their kids involved with Wethersfield schools and Whiting forensics and state police families, FBI and CIA, and a whole bunch of different countries. They have all the countries in the news involved with Wethersfield campuses and West Hartford campuses. And on the O'Neill campus, an O'Neill family has been leaking this while pretending other and using their kids for fake motivations. They don't know me. And they have roles with proven child abusers, leaders, and kids years apart, first forced. And the first forcing part of that, a Joshua Julian and others in Whiting Forensics and WFSB, Connecticut's Channel 3 News. They increasingly have collusions with intelligence next to them named Violet. And he said people on that street through time. These are people with generals too, through the wars, collusions, criminally foreign influence, preventing me from getting a response too. Where they put me fake conversations about the World Trade Center attack with WFSB. A whole bunch of military people tied to a Mark Violet, with people from Korea, people from Italy, people from Russia, people from Ukraine, people from my grammar school that were putting there are a whole bunch of people tied to a former Mayor Gold, and reportedly a Debbie Gold and a Lee Gold. For him, non-verbally confirmations, demonstrations recorded. Just like former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, also nonverbal confirmations of his collusions with a whole bunch of federal criminals that are recorded tied to those same people, and their roles planting evidences with people at and next to parks involved with untimely deaths, in the intelligence agencies' roles with medical campuses, putting fake evidences there, and at the judicial branch offices and corrections offices hyper additionally. These are databases. Then they're going to work for programs. Oh, because we're trying to do jobs. You're supposed to understand what James Madison were communicated first. In other words, get our side out the paper first, because they were used a bunch of people in the Bridge Superior Court and Harper courts. They affected confessions to me when there was no case involved. I found out it was tied to the depositions of former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and his co-defendants, and people involved with syntax with that, including interbranch families, intercities. Joseph Dennis is one of the ones involved with the intercities with West Hartford locations, with people from Wethersfield named Gold, and people tied to him who have been next to Trinity College and CCSU, involved with sexual medical offenders of kids and murders that were brought up in untimely deaths, intercities. Even if that was made up, the one at Trinity College, there are people involved with organized crimes and other untimely deaths years apart, and collusion /S with home break-ins, with people who have real-time collusion /S with that involved too, like a Robert Rodriguez. And they have the people named Scalora involved with sexual and medical offenders of kids, identity thefts and frauds, investigators involved with the same house /S with foreign and domestic medical offenders of kids, multiple courts, family members involved with them, victims advocates involved with overt criminal enterprises, private ones. John DeMauro is one of the ones who repeated confessions about it, his roles with the side town lines, but particularly this backside entrance to a Caldor, which is now a Walmart. Increasingly, people tied to them with the town line drive. And there's like a Senator, what's his name? Lieberman. And his family is involved with the syntax of people involved with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and a Dean Judd, and people of the sciences in the departments at Central Connecticut State University, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with people that planted evidence on all sides of my house, and had roles of home break-ins that were also involved and are also involved with the detective Samuda, with the FBI and some CIA, involved with sexual and medical offenders of little girls I knew when I was a kid. And he involved them with various natures of organized crimes, and with some black female and white female judges involved with some black KKK, Confederate flag team, Latino team, like a Justin Klovinskis and a Mark Violet, all along Route 175, conjunction to it, into that, like Ridge Road. They have collusions also on my street, increasingly with people involved with child abusers and intimate ties to retired Wethersfield police chiefs and their families. There's a Jessica Cintron, who a Wethersfield police chief, Cintron, would rather use as fake evidence, bringing up the hiding behind her, won't get on paper. Some Mendez police attached me to fake conversations with her, with older Mendez police brother, who also forced my sorry friend to collusion/S with them, with a Phil Clo, also involved with many others who have been planting evidence on all sides of my house, tied to him. I never had anything to do with him. They tried to make it look like other on the side of my campus one time. They've been planting evidences with people involved with proven child abusers, leaders of kids years apart, and sexual and medical offenders of kids. And Whiting Forensics has a bunch of people who have collusions with them with that. And they said it's recorded, confessed, and demonstrated for me. Whole bunch of people involved with 2-hour highway where it runs into Hangdog Lane, in conjunction to that and to that, are involved with planting evidence, identity theft, fraud, slanders. People I don't know at all. People that went out of their way to make it look like I knew them and people tied to them. Like a Perone family is one of the ones involved with various natures of journalists and intelligence next to Fox Connecticut News, who has collusions too, who have collusions with judges too, against Judge Napolitano, but making him have self-valid collusion/S before he was with, while he was still with Fox Connecticut News. And since Fox Connecticut News has collusions with the Facebook pages of New Britain Superior Court with sexual and medical offenders of kids, and with the Facebook pages of the campuses involved with organized crimes with them, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and with the differences of the intelligence at their locations or next to them. And increasingly has something to do with their roles all along Route 3 and with conjunctions to it, like the state judicial branch offices in Wethersfield, but also through the street. And Route 3 doesn't even go through Hartford. But these are people next to Hartford, has something to do with that. Those same names are collusions with that, linking it with all along Route 175 from the founding locations. Across America, the founding locations are supposed to have James Madison's plan inseparable from proper telling of them. The breaching method that reassigned black people as whites of eyes. In James Madison's description of how the breaching method had roles with things that no one wanted, specifically to have people either speak up about it and get hurt or keep their mouth shut about it and get hurt. And then when they were responding to the negative value nature progressions, action nature need to value, collusion/S more and more. You think that's our means? The suburbs that were designed by a torture, extortion, slavery method before cars even. Think about how a little bit of effort more. We have a different design. We have the water going through we're speaking about debt. You guys can't even be honest about our founder. Let's look at how much you're like, the people who wanted to debate, with logic and nature, reliant upon other having been. Other founders having pretended as a known founder. The only known founder we know the name of is James Madison. And they use his counter-extortion. You guys won't even allow people to be free and honest about the extortion of George Washington. That's why everyone's needing. The only thing you do, since you guys were kids, you hear everyone calling other names. We can't get anyone on paper legitimately. Increasingly, they're putting fake things in databases, having people act tied to it. Get them the heck on paper. I want a response for what I caught them doing with the kids. Don't pretend I had conversations with my family about it. I had no conversations with my family about people named O'Connor. There are a mother and daughter named O'Connor, involved with families all along Route 175, involved with various natures of organized crimes with the kids, and identity theft, fraud, slanders against me. And you guys have obligations to get me a response and get those Mendez police off the schools and get the FBI involved and the CIA on paper too. And they want to bring in more agencies, we'll do it too, because we could do it. We want to demonstrate what you're doing with this Kerr family. What are they doing with that corner of the street too? Get them off there and get them on paper with the Wethersfield Police and the Rocky Hill Police and the Newton Hill Police and these other departments involved. with the same house /S too, with the Wethersfield police brought up with their confessions, and the name Sullivan. There's a Daryl Sullivan too, with Alina's Pizza, with a bunch of people that brought them into the collusions with the proven child abusers, leaders of kids. There's more involved with them with Alina's Pizza. And there was a woman that reported in story regarding her son, reportedly trapped in a house or something like that. And the people involved with the network had collusions with Alina's Pizza with that woman and with that kid's voice in the background and their lawyers. And victims advocates have collusions with overt criminal enterprises and with a Daryl Sullivan, with Alina's Pizza, and a Magdalena and a Maggie switching names. And their neighbors are involved with World Trade Center predicate acts. And people from the other countries involved interstates with the World Trade Center. And it was also fake for them. So get the fucking into print on paper, one name in sequence. Get Judge Napolitano informed. Fox News, stop hiding what was actually typed to him. And collusions with the Whiting forensics too. Get them on paper. There are more people involved with the Phil Colo, further involved with predicate acts in my street, and further involved with with the principal child abuser, with this Phil Colo. And now he's with a guy who repeated things that demonstrate he has roles further with abuses of the kids. And then Phil Colo rode his bicycle swerving on my street. I still can't get them onto paper. Bob Chase with Whiting Forensics is one of the ones involved with the Phil Colo, further involved with various judges and prosecutors and medical and sexual offenders of kids, proven first force. They have more then and now involved with the Phil Colo. You get them on paper, one name in sequence. They have more people tied to a Smith family with Harper Hospital too, and their patients putting fake things in databases with their doctors, even if they're undercover there. In other words, they do little tricks to make it look like people spoke that didn't, and they're just totally putting fake things too. A whole bunch of people tied to a Leahy family have been planting evidences with people from all sides of criminal and civil cases too, as ones that planted evidence on my street too. Wire crime action methods. Get them the heck on paper, one name in sequence, dear God. With how many, maybe many tied to in other words, a Mike Pandoff and his brothers. I never met his brothers in my life. And his neighbors have collusions with the Phil Colo and people on my street with with other cousins still with the same last name, but with a different last name though. Like Scalora are involved, and people with the name DeMoro are also involved with people named Scalora, with the FBI director and the Saudi attackers, with some Wethersfield police that forced my Saudi ex to collusions with them, and with Channel 3 News collusions with fake conversation with me about the World Trade Center attack. And they have a whole bunch of people tied to a Claudia Scalora and multiple boyfriends of hers, intercities, and the locations associated with them, like increasingly people with West Farmers Mall involved with a Joe DeMoro and a Ray Colo and people named Doobie. Per them, I saw him there one time. So it was in other words, a whole bunch with people named Scalora too. A bunch of her boyfriends involved next with the intelligence with WFSB and Rocky Hill too, has something to do with that. And all along Route 3, the judicial branch offices has collusions with 2-Hour Highway and Hangdog Lane with their family members and people involved with the World Trade Center attack and the investigators of it used remotely. Just like the names of the people of the religions, they're different. Just to defend their use of different /S, it's as collusion /S. The same way it is here for our own. Collusions of the people attacking our founders, pretending they had roles with slavery, and framing James Madison and our plural founders, and C president /Chief. That's how you speak for the Constitution on a bridge. That's how you speak. So you guys don't know how to speak, Americans, because you guys came through campuses sickly, distinctly A through Z, but also sickly, non-distinctly, led by a hyper-foreign that showed them how to blame other things, others themselves, and then like the students, while the campuses, even like the ones training the primary grades, the peak campuses, the peak identities of the law, syntax nature, they left out black pupils, whites of eyes, for example. Black pupils, they're worse than criminally incompetent. We have all that we need recorded. Who disbelieves?